Mr. Chairman and also Vice Ranking Member Esty. Thank you very much. And thanks, Madam Secretary. I appreciate you being here today. I'm sure you remember this, but last time you were here, I told you a little bit about my congressional district. I'm kidding. You probably don't remember.
No, actually, I study all of your congressional districts.
But I represent the entire northwestern corner of the state of Illinois. Right. And it's mostly smaller towns, rural. It spans 7,000 square miles in 14 counties. So I'd like to talk a little bit about rural America as it pertains to infrastructure. And I really appreciate what Congressman Graves had brought up, where he raised that states are already struggling to fund roads and bridges in our rural communities. So I was really happy that the administration made a decision to earmark's not the right word, but to have part of the funding in the plan dedicated to rural America. And so I know specifically the plan calls for distributing rural formula funds in part based on rural lane miles. And so states like Illinois have plenty of rural roads, but also real needs in rural areas like drinking water systems, locks and dams, broadband, et cetera. So I'm wondering why the administration believes that the rural lane miles are a good way of allotting funds that are intended to be used for all kinds of infrastructure, if you wouldn't mind filling me in a little bit on that.
I don't really have an answer. That was kind of what the group came up with. And if you think that is not a right way to do so, I'm very open.
Okay, okay. Maybe we could put together a letter, or we could put together some thoughts, or happy to sit down with you about some of those other needs and maybe a funding formula that makes sense for some of these small towns.
Well, the Congress is going to have a chance to mark up its own bill. So the good news is, and I really want to emphasize this, we may have differences, but we're actually quite open.
Okay.
So we want to work with you. Something doesn't make sense. I mean, the 3-year look back is another issue that I've heard a great deal about. We're very open to, how do we work with the Congress on all of these?
Okay, I really appreciate that. I just think when you're looking at rural America, it is there are a lot of needs, and they are special needs that vary from urban America, and so really appreciate that offer to be able to work with you on that, and we'll take you up on that. Okay, question 2. The plan the administration released says the rural formula would also be adjusted to reflect policy objectives. Those were the words in the plan, policy objectives. And I don't know if you know the answer to this, but wondering if you could add a little more clarity on what that means by the policy objectives.
We send principles up, but we basically want to make sure that rural America has its own particular needs. And so we left it very vague. And again, it's an effort to, aside from the formula, which we thought was going to be an easy way to distribute funds, but if the Congress doesn't agree with that, then we certainly we want to revisit that if that does not make sense. And with certain goals, I think we would like to have greater economic development, more job creation, greater economic vitality, which is why broadband and, veterans hospitals can be of great help in providing that part of the infrastructure for rural America as well.
Okay, all right. I've got about a minute and a half, and if we have time for this also. So the plan on is silent to my knowledge on applying federal protections like Davis-Bacon. I know in your opening statements you mentioned that the bill was a workforce, it has a workforce component. So I'm wondering, specific to Davis-Bacon, if the administration supports the application of Davis-Bacon on the infrastructure projects that will come forward.
The administration certainly has not disallowed it. This is a hugely important issue. There are people against it, but I frankly don't see how a bipartisan bill can exist, come into being without that provision.
That's very good to hear. Let me see. So last question then. Locks and dams, and you might have addressed this a little bit ago, but my western border, not just of my congressional district, but the entire state of Illinois and, up and down the Mississippi River corridor, just severe needs, and wanting to, if you can address at all your thoughts on the locks and dam system, how you see your department being involved with that, what you can do to help us move some of the needed improvements along in a way that's a little bit more expedient.
I am so glad to say that that is the Army Corps of Engineers, and there are lots of concerns always addressed on that. The chairman has a harbor maintenance fund, which is a wonderful idea, which we should be replenishing and supporting to fulfill that purpose.
Okay, thanks, Madam Secretary.
I thank the gentlelady, and with that, Mr. Bost is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam Secretary, for being here. And I know it's been a long day, but I'd like to go back to some other questions, kind of concerns. Let me first off tell you that I would look forward if